Welcome to In the News for December the 16th, 2022. I am Brett Burney from appsandlaw.com.
And this is Jeff Richardson from iPhone JD. Hey, Brett, episode 80. That's a nice number. I like that.
No kidding. That is great. Congratulations to you. And I'll even say congratulations to me. I am so happy and thrilled to continue to be doing this because, wow, this past week had a little bit of news in it. Goodness gracious. Why don't we just jump right into the latest version of iOS 16.2. I upgraded about 2 days ago. I know you did. You had a fantastic post on this. And there's some really cool things in 16.2.
So much. I mean, to have so much come out at the end of the year is such a surprise.
Yeah.
And for 16.2, it's not just settings updates. There's a brand new app in there, an app that we've never heard of before. I mean, we heard about it in the preview. So, so this is the Freeform app, which I think is such a fantastic idea. And just a whiteboard. I mean, there's been so many times that I know from my work, and I'm sure, you know, other people in other businesses do the same thing. You know, you want to get together in a room, you have a big white piece of paper on the big board, people have their markers, and you're writing things and you're circling and you're drawing arrows, and then you move stuff over and you go to the next page. I mean, it's a great way to collaborate, to have something like this. And so I think it's wonderful that Apple has now given us this whiteboard that you could just use by yourself if you just want to have a place to sketch out ideas or drawings, and you can pull in pictures, you can pull in documents, you can pull in everything. But I think where it really shines is for collaboration. So you can text message it to other people, and you know, everybody, if you give them the permission to do so, they could add things to it. You could add things to it. You could all look at it live as you're having like a video conference call, or even just a regular phone conference call. Everybody could be looking at the whiteboard as you're changing things, updating things. I think it's you know, I hear a theory that Apple came out with this app because they were doing so much with collaboration, you know, FaceTime and messages and stuff like that, that they just sort of wanted a way to pull together all these technologies that they had created. Because I see a little bit of Keynote in here. I see a little bit of Notes in here. I see a little bit of a lot of different apps in here. So I think it's a fun app. And, you know, I mean, it is literally a blank slate, so people can do whatever they want with it. But I really think of it as a blank slate app in that endless, you know, people are going to come up with all sorts of things to do on this from a collaboration standpoint, and the uses are just endless. So I look forward to seeing creative uses of this.
You know, another app that I see in this, Jeff, is Microsoft OneNote. You know, we've all talked about OneNote versus Evernote, at least down through the years. And one of the things that I always liked about OneNote is that exactly this. I'm not restricted to just like a note thing. I can keep going on the canvas. I can post pictures, like I can squeeze in or zoom out and post things all over. I can draw something here. I can post a picture here. I can type some notes over here. And I just love that fact in OneNote that I could just go anywhere that I wanted to as if it were kind of like a blank whiteboard. And that's one of the things that I was thinking in this. And I do that all the time, just like you said, for my own personal brainstorming. I could just go in there and I'm like, I'm gonna throw this picture over there, and I want to throw this note over here and this little post-it note, that kind of a thing. So you're right. Exactly. I was seeing that from the standpoint of, I really think this is going to be helpful personally. But then I was even telling my family, like, you know what? Here's a great, like a family whiteboard, like, you know, not so much for like reminders, but like you could be using it for that. But, you know, just being able to throw pictures in to share with other folks, because the great thing about this Freeform app is that it does synchronize across all your devices. Now, you do need to be updated, right? To all, like your Mac needs to be updated, your iPad and your iPhone on that. But once you update everything to 16.2, then it does synchronize very well. I haven't started using it all that much because I just upgraded. I opened it and then I closed it. I wasn't able to do very much in there, but I'm excited just from that standpoint. And just last thing quickly, even though I like OneNote, the way that Microsoft allowed me to do drawing in the OneNote app seemed to be a little bit more restrictive than the drawing tools that I would have like in the iOS Notes app, if that makes sense, right? Or the sketching notes that I would have within the iOS native apps. And so the fact that I can kind of combine these two ideas and these thoughts or these concepts together is very exciting to me.
Yeah, it's neat stuff, and I'm glad that we have this to play with. And plus, I mean, like you say, you got to wait for everybody to update, but eventually everybody will update.
Absolutely.
And then you'll be, as long as the other person has an iPhone or iPad or a Mac, you'll be able to you'll know that they have it, because I mean, everybody has the app. In fact, almost obnoxiously so, the app is pushed to you when you update to 6.2 and 2. So I noticed that my home screen, like some of my icons, it just showed up on my second page and pushed things over to my third page. And at first I'm like, wait a minute, why are the icons moved around? And I'm like, oh, Oh, that's right. There's the new. Now it actually is a very pretty icon. I like the icon for a Freeform.
I do too. I do too. But I noticed the same thing, Jeff. I'm so glad you brought that up. I'm like, wait a minute, you moved my icons around. How dare you? And I had to go back and like, no, I want it over here. Like, in other words, a lot of times when you install a brand new app, from the App Store, it'll go to like the first page of your apps where there's a blank space, right? And so that's what I anticipated it doing. But no, it shoved itself into my second page of apps because I still use the pages. And then I go to reach for an app that muscle memory tells me is going to be right there on the second page. And I'm like, what happened? And funny. I had to like, wait a minute. No. You're going to go over here. I want my apps better, but I'm so glad that you pointed that out.
It's like Apple recognizes the sanctity of your first page.
Right, exactly.
As far as Apple's concerned, the second page, who cares? Whatever. So.
Right. Now, you mentioned several other things in iOS 16.2, and we'll talk about a few of those here in just a moment. But just a quick link that you put in, which was really neat, is what we didn't quite yet get within 16.2. In other words, there's some things that are still coming. I remembered one of the things in this article that you linked to at MacRumors was the Apple's buy now, pay later service,
they previewed as well that a long time ago, right?
Yeah, the savings account. Like, I know we've talked about these a couple of times, but those are not quite here yet. So we're anticipating maybe 16.3 or a little bit down the road as well.
Yeah, and we know that Apple is working on Apple Classical for classical music as well.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
that could be coming soon. So we know of some things coming down the road. But then again, maybe there's some more surprises too, much like we got all these surprises this week.
Right. Well, one of the, I guess not quite the surprise, but another big topic before we come back to 16.2 was something pretty revolutionary, if it holds to be true. And it remains to be seen how Apple might actually implement this. So we've talked about this several times over the last 80 episodes. Great. That, Apple restricts what you can do for in-app stores. Is that the right way to put it? In other words, if you want to buy something from Apple and the App Store, Apple will first of all take a 30% cut of what you're going to be selling. And it's very restrictive. Apple has always been very restrictive in the name of security and privacy and kind of maintaining control over the App Store. But there have been many people that didn't like this, shall we say, maybe Epic or even Amazon or, Comixology, that want to basically sell in-app books or products or, skins for your games, that kind of a thing. And Apple has always said, nope, we're not going to allow that. The European Union has said, well, we might want to rethink this. Anyway, you can probably explain this a little bit better. We just got a report this past week that maybe Apple could be opening something up, possibly, potentially, but we don't know exactly how yet.
We know that the European Union has said that Apple, everybody, but Apple's really the only one that's not doing it right now. Either it needs to allow third-party app stores or third-party side loading of apps. So in other words, a way to get an app on outside of Apple's App Store. And then, of course, it opens up the possibility of in-app purchases that are outside of Apple's App Store. Now, Apple hasn't said anything about what they're doing, but Mark Gurman of Bloomberg has reported that Apple is preparing to do this. I mean, they're going to do something because it's an EU regulation. I guess they have to do something. But there's so many questions. I mean, if you have Android, there is the Google Play Store, which is the main one, but then there's also some third-party app stores too, but they're really not that popular. And they also can be dangerous. I mean, if you go to a third-party app store and you think you're downloading, Facebook app, but it may actually be somebody imitating the Facebook app, there are security issues there. And it actually has happened on Android. It's not theoretical. And so who knows what would happen in the Wild Wild West if it happened to Apple. But as Jason, for example, is pointing out here, even if Apple allows a third-party app store, that doesn't necessarily mean that Apple's not going to take a cut of it. They currently take a cut of 30% or 15% for subscriptions after the second year.
Correct. That's right.
Apple may well say you can have a third-party app store, but we're still going to require developers from a security standpoint to have like a security token from us to prove that their apps are legitimate. And we'll charge, 27%. Or something that's almost 30%, such that when the third-party app store puts in the fees that they want to put on top of it, it doesn't make a difference. So, we will see how it all works out. The question is do you feel like it's been a good thing that apps from the App Store have, for the most part, been free of malware and dependable?
Right.
Do you think that's a good thing? Or do you feel like it's a restriction? Like, I haven't been able to get the apps I really want to get because of the App Store. And different people have a right to different opinions on that.
Right.
If you think that we've been restricted and that all these great apps have not been available, or that developers, that there's things that developers should be allowed to do in their own app store, well, then maybe this will be interesting. But as Jason said here, he has sort of a funny line at the beginning of his article that, whatever the world basically is now, it's probably going to be the same after whatever happens, because I think it's revolutionary in that we've never had a third-party app store before. But at the end of the day, if Apple still has restrictions on it for security and everything else, is the world going to really be all that different? I don't know. We'll see.
Interesting. Yeah. We'll put that to the back burner, because I know, again, it was sort of just a quasi type of a rumor, even though, we've always been kind of watching what Apple might be doing on this, but it really just would, I think, pull in sort of a new era in the app stores. I mean, just the fact that, that's the whole issue that Epic had about, we're not going to have Fortnite on the iPad and the iPhone because we want to sell our own skins and we don't want you to take a cut of it. Anyway, we'll see. That was a huge lawsuit, and there's many other lawsuits as well that are around this. And it'll just be interesting to kind of see where that's going to go.
It will be.
So we mentioned that along with iOS 16.2 for the iPhone and the iPad, there is updates for just about everything else, including the watchOS, which is really interesting. watchOS 9.2, and there are several interesting updates in this one as well. I'm very excited about this.
Yeah, I mean, the big kickboxing algorithm update is going to be a major. I actually took kickboxing in college, Brett.
Whoa, really?
I actually got
little known fact
for a semester taking Thai kickboxing, whatever.
Okay, well then you are excited about this
in everyday life, but you never know in that next court hearing.
You never know.
I may
you never know.
Pull that out. But one of the interesting features that people might find more useful is I like the race route feature that you can race against yourself.
Yes.
And there's also more things that I have to dig into the details on this. But right now, other members of your home, if they want to control HomeKit accessories in your house, I think that maybe before this update, they couldn't do so on the watch. Maybe they'll have more rights with this update. But usually when Apple updates the Apple Watch, there's not a ton that they add. This one is actually a large number of changes. So I look forward to digging into all of these.
I'm interested in this too. I haven't tried it out, but the noise app, on your phone, on your watch, if you're like walking around, or sometimes I find that if I'm driving and I got the window open and my arm is resting on the on the windowsill, my watch will say, "Oh, this is too many decibels. It's very loud, right? Environmental sound level is a little too high, but this is good if you're about an airport or something like that." But now it can talk about if you have AirPods Pro in there, and it can maybe give you a little bit more information. Anyway, good stuff. We'll probably talk about some of these additional options. In fact, I think one of my tips, I'm going to talk about one of the updates that they have with the workout tools in Apple Watch. So we'll come back around to that. Now let's go back to the iPhone with something we talked about. I remember last week, Apple Music Sing, or otherwise known as Apple Karaoke. I thought this was really cool. You had a link to Cult of Mac story here where they're talking about this, and one thing, we'll get into some of the details, that yes, it's good if you want to sing along with one of your favorite songs, but I never thought about this. Who's the author here? Griffin Jones. Was that he was listening to Apple Music Sing not because he wanted to sing along with one of the songs, but because he liked a song, he just didn't want the vocals, right? Because he was like focusing and concentrating on what he was writing. And so he just turned down the lyrics and just listened to the instrumental version. I'd never kind of thought about like that could be a neat use of Apple Music Sing.
I'm so glad you highlighted that, because I had the exact same thought when I was playing around with the feature at first. And the reason why is I don't often listen to things when I work. I know that some people love to do so, but I have had times just for a change of pace where I've wanted to listen to some background music while I work. But if I have something with words, especially words that I know, I find myself singing along and it's distracting. But so what I would often do is like put on like movie soundtracks, like the Star Wars, John Williams.
A lot of people do, or video game music or something like that.
So it's just sort of a background. And I had the exact same, I didn't actually try this yet, but when I was playing around with Apple Music Sing and I brought down the vocals, when you bring down the vocals, they don't completely eliminate them. It's not like the vocals are at 0.
Correct.
Like on a 1 to 100, they're at like a 2. I mean, you can just barely hear them in the background. But you really basically just hear the background, music, guitar and drums, stuff like that. And I had the exact same thought that this might be an interesting alternative that you could listen to music while you work without being so focused on the words. But that's not necessarily an intended focus. For the intended focus, I'm going to tell you what, it actually works pretty well. I mean, I don't do a lot of karaoke.
Pretty cool.
Playing around with it, and it really, really worked. There were 1 or 2 songs I listened to that the lyrics weren't actually exactly with the song. Like,
okay, interesting.
the lyrics are sung a little offbeat, and yet the words were coming across as if it was a perfectly on beat. And I'm like, well, that's a shame that they didn't do that perfectly. But I think there was only one song I saw that on. Most of the other ones were really perfect, and it's neat that you can bring down the music. I had fun playing with it. I put it at my post. I gave it to my daughter, who's a teenager, and she had a lot of fun playing with it too.
Right.
It's a neat little feature. It really is.
Speaking of which, so my daughter just had a birthday yesterday, and so I was out of town. I came back late last night, but this morning we were sitting at the table. She was having some birthday cake, and I'm like, "Hey, guess what? Happy birthday, honey! I got Apple Music singing for you." Well, my daughter, who's also a teenager, happens to be a very big fan of K-pop. Okay. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, well, they're probably not going to have a lot of K-pop songs, but they do, Jeff. It's pretty amazing how many songs they have in there. And then it's funny because I was right before we started recording, I go by her bedroom, and she's singing at the top of her lungs one of the latest Taylor Swift songs. She's also a Tay-Tay fan, and I could tell she had the music on, but she had the Apple Music turned down. She's a much bigger Spotify fan, but she's using Apple Music Sing for this, and it's just it's more than anything else. It's a little fun, and if I'm not mistaken, maybe this also works on Apple TV. Do they have this on Apple TV, or is that coming as well?
But only the latest Apple TVs. It only is the one that came out a couple of months ago.
That's right.
So you have to have the Apple TV 4K 2022 version as opposed to the Apple TV 4K 2021 and earlier version. So I wasn't able to try it. In fact, one thing I meant to do, and I hadn't actually done it yet, was if you use an iPhone that supports Apple Music Sing and you AirPlay to an older Apple TV, or an iPad for that matter, can you sort of get around the fact that
does that work?
I haven't tried that yet. We'll see if that works. So,
well, we might try that tonight, because my wife, when I told her about this, she was like, "Oh, well, that would be so fun. We can watch Elf, and then we can all, and then we can all have Apple Music karaoke." It really is just a fun thing, and I hope it's more than just a party trick, literally. Although that would be fine as well. But again, just for some additional uses, I didn't think it would be quite that of an expansive use. But anyway, Apple Music Sing. Make sure you upgrade 16.2. It's not available. My daughter hadn't upgraded yet, so this morning we had to do that.
Brett, if you're thinking about watching the movie Elf, did you see in my most today that the movie Spirited? Have y'all considered? Have y'all watched that yet?
And I was thrilled because I've been telling my wife about it. I mean, I'm a huge Will Ferrell fan and a Ryan Reynolds fan as well, right? And I've been telling him, like, there's a new movie out. Like, I think it'll be pretty good. And I've watched the trailers, but I hadn't watched it yet. You did not too long ago, and you liked it.
I will admit. I thought it was going to be just totally silly. I mean, I love Will Ferrell too, but I thought it was going to be like over the top Will Ferrell. It's not. It's incredibly well done, and it really is like a great Broadway musical. I was far more impressed with it than I thought it would be. The music is quite good. So, and I mean, I don't want to. It would not surprise me.
Yeah, no spoilers.
Another Christmas classic, like
really?
People like much like
Will Ferrell's killing the Christmas season,
all
right?
These Christmas story things that people watch year after year. I could actually see Spirited becoming one of those. So. Anyway,
just quickly, I'm not the biggest, musical fan, but I will tell you, we really enjoyed Apple Music's. What was it called? Shmigadoon, I think. That was also pretty fun. Yeah, that was a good one as well.
That was good.
I think the continuity camera came in 16.1. Am I correct on that? When we talked about this, or maybe it was 16. It's been around for a little bit now. We've talked about this, and the idea is that you can now use, at least on with a Mac, right? You can use your iPhone as your webcam, and it really, I've tried it out just once or twice quickly, not anything for an official phone call or anything yet, but I'm getting there. Now, the fact is, in order to do this correctly, you would like to use the back-facing camera of your iPhone, which means that the iPhone somehow has to be above your laptop screen or your Mac screen and looking at you. And in that case, you need to have some kind of a mount, or I think you've used a tripod. Am I correct on that, Jeff?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So now I love this little story at the beginning of your post today. You were talking about the continuity camera mount for, I think, an iMac, right? Belkin, I know, had made one that you can fit on the top of your laptop screen. But if you've got an iMac, like I know that you do at home, then what do? Like, how do you use a little tripod? But now Belkin is hopefully coming out with a little MagSafe mount, which I think is really cool.
Yeah, it's neat. I mean, I've had trouble getting it sort of balanced and positioned in exactly the right way. Once I do get it positioned correctly, the quality of my iPhone camera is worlds better. than the webcam on my iMac.
Yeah.
So I really look forward to trying this. And again, although I think that they advertise it as being for the Apple Studio display, which I do not own.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
I have heard people say that this same mount will work with, and just any display. If it's hopefully it'll work. So I really want to try it out. I wish I could buy it. Just before we started recording today, I jumped on the Apple website once again to see if it's available, and it's still not there.
Still not.
I don't know if it was briefly available yesterday. Like maybe they had like 10 of them and they sold them right away and then it went away, or if they just have a page on the website to sell it, but they're not quite selling it yet. But I'm really looking forward to it, and I will report back once I have one.
Yesterday, I was in an all-day conference where one of the speakers was talking about easy cybersecurity tips, Jeff. And one of the things that they talked about was the use of authenticators, right? So first, a lot of people know about two-factor authentication or multi-factor authentication, where typically you log into a website and then for them to make sure it's you, they'll send you a text message, right, with a code that you have to type in. And that's better than nothing, but even better than sending a text message would be to use a third-party authenticator app. And I know there's several out there, like Google has an authenticator app, Authy, I think, or Duo is another one, but Microsoft also has an authenticator app. I've used it before. I'm not the biggest fan of authenticators. I usually either do a text message or even use 1Password for some things, but I thought this was really interesting. We just talked about this yesterday, which is why this was on my mind. And you linked to a story today that Microsoft Authenticator, the app, it was available on the Apple Watch, but now it's going to be continued. I guess maybe that's not the end of the road necessarily, because it's still on the phone, and that's where I usually would use it, would be on the iPhone. But it is nice to have those authenticator apps available on your watch as well, so you can just twist your wrist to get that on there. But interesting that Microsoft is gonna kill this off just for the Apple Watch. The iPhone, it looks like it'll still be available, but not for the Apple Watch.
Yeah. I mean, you say you're not as big a fan of the authenticator apps. I'm a huge fan, and I much prefer to use an authenticator app for two-factor authentication. Use text messaging, because you always hear these stories about how it's easier for a criminal to, get a SIM card and pretend like they're using your phone.
That's true.
I'm not saying it's really easy, but I think it is easier than spoofing your authenticator app. We use Microsoft Authenticator at my law firm. We have for a long time.
Good,
and so,
good.
If I'm logging into my computer from here in the office, it's one thing and I don't need to use it. But if I'm outside of the office and I'm VPNing in, we require using the Microsoft Authenticator to prove that not only do you have your username and your password, but also that you can, approve yourself through the authenticator. So when I have used the Apple Watch version of it, it's been sort of nice that, like, when you go to log in, I get the little thing on my Apple Watch and I can click, I can tap a button that says approve. Yes, Jeff Richardson. According to Microsoft, there's something about the level of security that they want to offer that they say that the Apple Watch doesn't provide, but the iPhone does. So they're going to require you to just use it on the iPhone. Maybe a future version of the Apple Watch will get more sophisticated. I mean, we know that the electronics inside of an Apple Watch are a lot more simple than in an iPhone. So maybe over time they'll bring it back. But again, I don't consider it to be a huge. I mean, it's nice to use the watch because it's right there on my wrist. But my Apple Watch, my iPhone is usually right there next to me as well. So it's not, not a huge deal to have to use the phone to authenticate.
Yeah, interesting. I do see that if I go to the App Store link for Microsoft Authenticator, which it looks like that this Authenticator app is number 5 in productivity on the App Store. That's pretty amazing. Like it's a completely free app, but it does still show that it's available for the iPhone, the iPad, and the Apple Watch. So it'll maybe be, several more weeks.
I think it's the next version of it that comes out next month that they're going to take away the Apple Watch. So
yeah, interesting. Well, we promised that this was going to be coming, and we are staying true to our word to report on any rescue efforts where somebody was found because of the iPhone 14 satellite rescue feature. Thankfully there was a happy ending to this story, but quite an amazing rescue effort on this one. Apparently a couple was driving in Southern California. Their car went off the road down into a canyon. In the canyon, I think it says here that they did not have cell service, so they could not place a cell phone call, but one of the couple did have an iPhone 14. So they turned on the satellite rescue features, and it turns out that they found them. I think there's even a video that goes with this. Yeah, here it is.
Of the helicopter picking them up, yeah.
They were picking, they couldn't get down to them easily, so they had a helicopter come over and literally pull them up from the canyon floor. Just pretty amazing, but yay! once again for the app iPhone 14 with satellite rescue feature.
So this is the second story that we've heard about people using the satellite feature for a rescue. By the way, it is a rescue. When I wrote my post this morning, an iPhone JD reader wrote to me and was laughing that instead of saying rescue, I wrote recuse. But I guess I'm being a lawyer.
Oh, okay. Well, that's a little slip of the legal tongue there.
Fix that typo. But the rescue effort. But what's interesting is, unlike the first example where the person was up in Alaska, and you might say, if you wanted to be an impassionate cold person, you might say, oh, well, he should have known better as he was going off-road and snowmobile in Alaska to have like
8 feet of snow.
But this is an example of something that, the person certainly did not intend to be at the bottom of a canyon 300 feet down. That was not at all their intention. Their intention was to stay on the road. And it just so happened that they got off the road and were somehow in an area where there's no cell phone coverage. And so this is a really good example that it's not like they could have planned ahead for needing to use the satellite feature. But then once they found themselves in this horrible situation, thank goodness they were able to activate it and get help and then get the helicopter there to save them. So who knows what would have happened to these people if they hadn't had this capability.
Wow. Yeah, no kidding.
This was really interesting one.
Very good. In the know. Now, I thought it would be a good idea for us to provide a little bit of tips to the extent that we can on some of the new updates with either 16.2. Yes. I'm actually choosing to go to the Apple Watch route, as it were, because with the new watchOS 9 update now, or 9.2, the race route workouts, or race route, which I'm pretty excited about. So the general idea with this quickly is that if you typically run or walk in a similar pattern, right? In other words, we have our road is about a mile, 1.2 miles or so, and sometimes I'll just go out and, just run up and down that road. So I typically will do the same route several days in a row. Well, if you are one that likes to compete against yourself, the Apple Watch update now allows you to track the route, and it'll tell you if you are doing better or worse than maybe the last few times that you ran this particular route. Now, that's neat, and I haven't actually tried that, but what I really wanted to focus on today is the ability now to sort your workouts on the Apple Watch. I did not know that this was something that there may have been some limited capabilities to search, but one of the things you can do now is when you go into a workout and you got a whole list of things on your Apple Watch, like outdoor run, indoor walk, indoor run, kickboxing, or, yoga, whatever the case may be. On each of those little panels there, Jeff, there is a little tiny circle with 3 dots in the upper right corner of each of those little panels. Now, I typically don't tap on that because I just simply, punch whatever the workout that I'm doing, and it starts off, and I have an open goal typically because I'm not really, timing myself necessarily. Well, if you tap on those 3 little dots, one of the things that you can do now is you can sort your workouts. So since I typically do outdoor runs, I can go to the outdoor run little card there on my Apple Watch. I tap the 3 dots, and then it gives me a little sort icon. It's 3 little lines, looks like a little filter there. And on that sort icon, I can now sort my workouts either by suggested, which I think is typically the default there. I can sort it by goal-based. I can sort by custom, or now I can sort by the routes. And this is where you would go in if you wanted to start tracking your race routes, as it were. But one of the other things that's it's hard to kind of go in and show this to you, and you may not have this accessible to you if you don't have some previous routes that are available to you. But if you use your Apple Watch to trace your different routes, what I love about this is that if you go in, you will see the little map, a little square of the map of the route that you took. And if you tap on it, it will animate that route for you. Like it'll show you like you started here and you went all the way around here. Like it'll just a quick little animation, which I just think is absolutely brilliant, because one of the things that apparently that you have to do when you're tracking your race route or competing against yourself is you have to start in pretty much the same location that the previous routes were. So I just thought that was kind of neat. Like that little animation will also show you where to start and where to end, so that if you wanted to track that. Now that's about as far as I've gotten so far on this this, Jeff. I think I'm very excited to try this out over the next few weeks, and maybe I'll report back in a few weeks or so on that. But my in the know is kind of the race route, the new race route, but the fact that you can sort your workouts now, and then you can even go into the little maps and look at the route, and it'll do a little animation. Did you try it on yours?
No, I'm looking at my watch. I'm not seeing the little animation thing, but it is interesting that I just updated my watch like yesterday. And seeing, and I don't do a lot of outdoor runs. I'm more of a treadmill person, but I do see some previous routes that I have done in New Orleans. I mean, I'm looking at them right here. One of them that I did back in March of 2020. So like I said, it's been a while. But if I wanted to see if I can do better than I did back in March of 2020, I could select that one. That's pretty cool.
Now, on those little routes, they have a little pencil icon. Did you tap on that little pencil icon?
No, I didn't tap on the pencil yet.
Tap the pencil icon, and then it'll show you the map, and tap on that map, and it should start that little animation for you.
Look at that.
I know. Isn't that cool?
Wow, very fun. Oh, now, that actually makes good sense, because if you go over the same track twice, you might not be able to see just from looking at the map, was I going north, was I going south? But now I can actually because that's exactly what I did. I went up, and then I came right back over the same street.
Right. Cool. I'm going to play with this a lot more, because again, I just normally say, no, I'm doing a run, and I punch the outdoor run, and it counts, down 3, 2, 1, and I'm off to the races. Well, not quite literally, but the idea is there's a whole lot more now in this. Like, I'm going to sit down for several minutes, and I'm going to start exploring a little bit more what I can do to customize some of the views within the race route and within the other tools here, which is really neat.
Neat stuff. That's very cool. And that's very, very neat detail that I would not have thought about before. So my tip, like you said, also has to do with iOS 16.2, and it's something that we discussed in theory last week, and now I wanted to discuss it in practice, which is advanced data protection. So on last week's episode, we talked about this, about how, the big one for me is Apple has a backup in iCloud of my iPhone, and although the backup is encrypted, it was encrypted in a way that both I could access it and also Apple could access it. And so now with advanced data protection, I can take away Apple's access to it. So Apple holds on to it, but they hold on to the encrypted data. They can't access it. If the FBI gives them a subpoena, they can't give it to them. If some rogue employee at Apple wants to start looking at my stuff,
they have no access.
No, they don't have access. So my tip today is how to turn it on, because there are a number of steps. And so when you go to turn it on, and you do so by going into settings, your settings app, and then you type on iCloud, which is the very top, just your name at the very top of the settings.
Your picture. Yep.
Your picture. And then you go over to iCloud. And then once you tap on iCloud, if you go down a little bit, you will see something called advanced data protection turned off. And if you tap on the word advanced data protection, from here, you can turn it on. But it's not just turning it on. There's a whole number of steps you have to go through. First of all, you need to, and we discussed this last week, you need to choose, and I think Apple makes you choose at least one, what backup method are you going to use? In other words, I don't mean backup in terms of backing up data, but backup if you forget your password. Because once your recovery is, what are you going to use if you get, amnesia one day and you no longer remember your iPhone password and you can't get access to your iCloud backup?
Because you're out of luck.
Your phone's been destroyed. I want to have a new phone. I want to download my stuff. What am I going to do? So you can do two things. First, you can set up a person that you designate as someone that you trust for a backup. And so I did that for my wife. And then what happened is it sent her a text message and messages, and you can change what the text of it is, or it's got some pre-built text. But then on her iPhone, she actually had a link, and she had to tap on the link on her phone, and then it went to a page, and it says, okay, you're now accepting that you are going to be Jeff's, backup.
You're responsible,
person.
Right?
Exactly. And you can set more than one, but I set up my wife. So the second thing that you can do is it gives you a long recovery key. It's 20 something digits long.
It's 28. I see that here.
28 digits. It's a bunch of letters and numbers. It's a bunch of random letters and numbers. And it displays them on your screen, and you're responsible for writing them down someplace. Apple makes you do this. And then later on, Apple is going to make you actually put them in, and you can't just copy and paste them in. You have to literally type them. It makes sure that you're not just copying and pasting from somewhere else. And so when you have your secure key, you can, put that in a secure physical location, a lockbox, your parents' house, someplace that you consider a safe place to keep it, maybe in a sealed envelope, so that if you ever need to get to it, to get access to the backup, you can do it. Or because it's just a string of numbers, you could put it in a password manager too, if you wanted. So once you've done all that stuff, you might think, okay, I've got the two, the two backup methods to get in. Now I can turn on advanced data protection. No, because now what it's going to say is, because this is a new level of security, we need to make sure that every one of your devices with access to your iCloud account has been updated to the most latest version of the operating system.
Yeah,
and for some older devices, that makes sense. They can't even be updated to a new enough operating system to support this.
Ouch.
And I was surprised when I looked at it, and it gives you a list. It says, here's all the devices associated with your iCloud. You have to right now go to them and either update them to the latest level of iOS or whatever the operating system is, or you need to remove them from your iCloud. And so to give you a perfect example, I had actually already updated the Apple TV in my downstairs to the latest version of the TV OS. But we have an older Apple TV that's in my bedroom that we very rarely use. And Apple's like, nope, you haven't updated that one yet. So I had to go and turn it on and update the operating system. But then there were some things that it said to update that were like really old. Like, for example, I think one of them was like my iPhone 4S, which if I have that in my house still, I don't even know. And so obviously there's no way I could go find it. In fact, I think it's even too old to update anyway. But what I could instead do is log out of iCloud on that device, which frankly is smart, because if I still own that device, and I may have recycled it right now, I wouldn't want somebody using that to log in anyway. I use an iMac at home, and it showed me that I had like 5 different iMacs logged in to my iCloud, which was amazing to me, because I get new iMacs like every 4 or 5 years. I mean, it was going way, way back in iMacs.
Oh, interesting.
And, sure enough, what those were old computers that I upgraded from. And even though I erased the old computer, I didn't technically log out of iCloud, perhaps. So I was very happy to tell Apple, oh yeah, go ahead and log out from iCloud for all of those things. And then on top of that, my HomePods had to all be updated too. I'm like, what does my HomePod have to do with the iCloud? And
wow, so this is quite an endeavor.
I had to go to the home app on my iPhone, and you got to go to settings, and you have to wait for it to even recognize that there is an update, and then apply the update. Updating HomePods takes a while. So it takes a long time to do this process. But once you do it, once you have either updated all of your devices or removed them from your iCloud account, and you have your backup people and your backup key, then you can finally turn it on. And at that point, it just takes about 15 seconds. It's done. And so, it took a long time to get to that point. But once I did it, I almost expected more fanfare, because it had happened, maybe throw some confetti on the screen or something like that. So that's it. So now I'm secure. So now, again, did I trust Apple with my backup in the past? I guess so. I mean, I would trust Apple's so privacy oriented that I trust them, to keep things private. But I just feel better knowing that even if, like I say, a rogue employee or something like that, I no longer need to worry about trust, because now I know that the only person with access to my data is me.
Right.
And even if I lose my iPhone and forget my passwords and everything else, I can either help my wife get me checked in, or I can use my backup password. And I like the extra level of security. My wife's comment when she saw me going through this process was, there is no way in the world I'm going through all of that. And I laughed at her and told her I was going to say that on the podcast today, because it does take a while to do. And you have to really decide, do I want to go through all this nonsense just to get extra security? And that's a personal decision that everyone's going to make for themselves. Absolutely. If it's just a teenager and, you don't, the most secure thing that you have in there is just, your personal thoughts that you write in the notes, maybe it's not. But if you do, have business related stuff on your iPhone that you want to make sure, you want to make extra special sure that it is confidential. I love that Apple is now offering this feature, and I was happy to take advantage of it.
Interesting. Yeah. And I do emphasize, not because I want to scare people, but I think it helps you to understand the importance of making sure you do this with a purpose. If you lose that recovery key or the password, the one password that there's no way to get it back. I just anticipate
falls off the side of a boat.
Right.
And I've lost it, and I need to get a new iPhone, and I want to put all my data on it again and download it from the iCloud.
Right.
I can't do that unless I have. So you are taking a risk. So you may decide, my friends are less trustworthy than Apple. So, I'm not going to allow, or I don't even trust myself just to keep the backup key. But so it's a personal
I guess I want to call it like an educated risk, even though risk usually has a negative connotation. It's just the idea, the understanding that, Apple is doing this to help you protect information if that's what you want to do. But how many people are going to be going to the Apple store, Jeff, in the next few months and be like, oh, I lost this. I can't remember the password. Can you please help me recover it? And the Apple folks are going to be like, no, we can't. We have no way to access that. We can't get it, and neither can the FBI. You know, like, you're welcome. But I just, like, we know there are going to be people that are going to that it's going to happen. I mean, I'm even a little bit nervous, to be honest with you. I think I'm going to turn it on. I haven't done it yet, so I was thrilled to hear you walk through all those steps, Jeff, because you know, it's great that you can be the guinea pig and go through it all. But it's good to know. And again, it's more of just like, make sure you're educated on this. It's not something lightly you're going to turn on, which obviously, listening to you now, we know it's not. But it is a good thing. I think I'm eventually going to turn it on, but I'm just going to make sure that I'm educated in the sense that I'm taking it seriously. This is the, you know, I'm going to put that recovery key along with, you know, my mother's wedding band and, you know, our trust documents in the safe deposit. Like, it's that important, right? Right. Something, because this truly is the device that you're carrying around so much information and has access to so much information on there. So thank you for walking through that. That's really good. Woo, that was a lot. I think we're done for today, though.
As long as Apple doesn't release 16.3 on next week, we're in good shape. Yes.
I think we're good. Okay, so is next week? Are we on for next week, or we're taking off? Okay, yeah, we're taking off.
Christmas, taking off next week. We'll see everybody, I guess, in 2 weeks then.
2 weeks, which is the 30th. And then we'll just tease everybody. We got something special planned for the very beginning of 2023. We'll leave it at that, but tune in. That's for our episode of December 6th. Well, as always, thanks for joining us, folks. We really appreciate that you listen to us, and we really, truly treasure the audience that we have started to build up. And always feel free to reach out to us. Jeff, always fun to talk with you, sir. And we won't talk with you next week, but in 2 weeks we will.
Thanks, Brett. Happy holidays, everybody, and see y'all later. Bye.